Hi guys, this is my first YouTube video, so bear with me. If you hear anything in the background, it's Chrislyn playing with my keys to keep her occupied so she doesn't scream. But it's not working, so bear with me. We're gonna talk about my birth story. I was 18 when I got pregnant. It was like a month and a half after I graduated high school, and I've been with the same guy. He was my first everything, so we've been together, it'll be 5 years next month, and our daughter is 16 months old. But when I found out, I just had a fluke decision to go buy a test. I hadn't missed my period yet, but I didn't really feel well, and a couple nights before my mom was sitting on the couch with me and we were watching some TV show, and she looked at me and she was like, "Your face is fat, are you pregnant?" And I was like, "No, had my period yesterday, Mom." Lied out my ass, you know. And so I went and took a test, found out I was pregnant, and moms really do know everything because I was so scared. And at the time I was working at IHOP, so I was at work one day and I didn't want to tell my mom in person because I was really emotional, and I'm not the emotional type, or I wasn't before I had a kid, but now I cry over everything. But I didn't want to tell her I was pregnant, so I just sent her a picture of the test and over text, and she was like, "No, you're lying." I was like, "No, Mom, I'm not lying." But my brother used to do that to her all the time as a joke, so she thought I was joking, legitimately. And finally I convinced her I was pregnant, and she was like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna cook your dad dinner, make him a nice dinner, sit him down, then I'll tell him." Because I wasn't gonna tell him. I was so scared of my dad. He always told me that if I ended up pregnant, that he would have all of my stuff on the front lawn by the time I got home, and that he would kick me out, which wasn't the case. Because when I got home from work that night, he sat me down on the couch and he was like, "Well, I'm really disappointed in you. You were supposed to go to college and do all this." And I really let him down, but Chrislyn is his favorite thing ever now, so it all turned out in the end. So as for my pregnancy, I had a really easy pregnancy. I didn't get sick very much. I probably threw up 3 times the whole time I was pregnant. But what else? I had bled at 28 weeks, and I thought that I was having a miscarriage, but I just had a soft spot in my cervix. Chrislyn, we found out she was a girl, and I knew the whole time. I kind of talked it into existence because I did not want a boy. I didn't know anything about little boys. All I know how to do is braid hair and dress her and all that stuff, and I just didn't know what I was going to do if I had a little boy. So I'm sitting in the clinic, because we did a ultrasound by ourselves before we told our parents, and I was praying the whole time, and it was a girl, and Daniel was really upset, but now he's glad that we had a girl first. So my pregnancy was good. I worked up until the last week of my pregnancy. I was okay. I told my manager, look, I'm gonna take the last 5 days off, or the last 7 days off, because I think she's gonna be late, so I'm gonna take 7 days and just chill at home, just wait for her to come. So I took those days off, and she came 2 days into it, so I got 2 days off of work because she was 5 days early. So let's talk about going into, well, I didn't really go into labor because I was induced, but that night I woke up at 4 in the morning. It was that morning actually, and I felt something leaking, but I WebMD'd and came up with a conclusion that I was pissing myself. So I didn't go and go straight to the hospital then. I woke up Daniel, and I was like, "Hey, either I'm peeing myself or we need to go to the hospital." And he was like, "You probably just peed yourself, go back to sleep." So I laid down a towel and I went back to sleep. And I wake up at 9 and it's still going, and I go to wake up my mom. She's like, "Why didn't you go at 4 in the morning? This is bad." So she tells me to go in and see if that's what it is or if it's something else. And she said, "We're gonna go to the grocery store." I was like, "Okay." So we had to Womack, which is probably like a 30-minute drive with traffic to the hospital, and I'm chilling the whole time. Like, they tell you to eat before you go in, and I probably had like 2 Cheez-Its because I'm dumb, and I didn't think I was like gonna have the baby that day because they had just kept sending me home every time I thought I was in labor. And so we get there and they test the fluid, and they put like a blue, like a piece of paper in, and if it turns blue, then it's amniotic fluid and they have to induce you. Well, it didn't turn blue, so they wait like 2 hours to see the doctor, and the doctor comes in, he looks, and everything just like, when he opened me up, everything just fell out. Sorry if this is too much TMI, but this is how birth is, so don't watch it if you don't want to hear about it. But he looked at me and he starts talking about epidurals and this and that, and it's all going so fast, and Daniel's eyes are literally like this freaking big around. And I call my mom and I tell her to come in, and they're like, we're admitting you. And then I got my IV and everything. They took me in, and what happened was my amniotic sac ruptured like prematurely, so they had to manually dilate me with like this thing called a Cook bowl, which is like a balloon that they put up in your cervix, and they blow it up, and then it's like attached to a string, and they turn it, and that'll like dilate you faster. But when they take it out, you go down like 2 levels. So if you're 6 centimeters dilated with a Cook bowl, you're like a 4. So they needed to get me to at least a 6 so that I would be a 4 and get myself to a 6 so that I could have the epidural and keep going. Well, labor's good. Like, I'm taking it like a champ because like I have a really high pain tolerance, and contractions or whatever are good. And then the guy comes in to do my epidural, so I'm like, cool, whatever. Like, I could have done it without it, to be honest. It wasn't that bad. But he walks in and he tells me to put my elbows on my knees, and he kicks everybody else out of the room, so I'm in there by myself, and it's him and another nurse and then me on the table. And he tells me to put my elbows on my knees, so I'm sitting like this, like holding my head, and I'm having contractions, but I'm not, like, I've never had a kid before, so I didn't think to like count. I don't know why, but I didn't count. So so my contractions are like 20 seconds apart, and they're lasting like a while at a time. And he's telling me to sit still, and obviously I can't sit still because these really freaking hurt. Like, I'm not making a big deal out of it because I'm not that kind of person, but like, he was getting on my nerves. And he's like huffing and puffing at me, and he can't get in the right place. Well, he stuck that needle in my back 6 times. And each time they stick a needle in your spine, that's a chance of infection. 6 chances of infection, 6 chances of paralyzation. And he couldn't get it in the spot, and he was just like, okay, well, the doctor walks in, and he goes, well, have you checked her? And he's like, no, and the nurse kind of looks at him funny. And I think the last time they checked me was when they took the Cook bowl out, and by then I was a 4, so they hadn't checked me since I was a 4. And he just walks in and looks, and he's like, the doctor, and he's like, you can start pushing now, because the guy was trying to put the epidural in my back, and I was already dilated to a 10. So she came really fast. They weren't expecting her to come until like 10 o'clock the next morning, and I went into the doctor's at 10 o'clock that morning, so that would have been a whole 24 hours. This was probably around like 10 at night. So actually they didn't start inducing me until we went in at 9. They didn't induce me until like 12 o'clock. Yeah, 12 o'clock. So it would have been, what, 10 hours of labor? And I pushed maybe like 5 times, and she was, that wasn't the worst part. There was nothing wrong with her, thank God, though, but afterwards was the big issue, and I'm gonna get to that in a second. But she was perfectly healthy. She was 6 pounds 12 ounces, the prettiest baby I'd ever seen. You know how babies like come out really ugly? Kristlyn was like the most perfect pink little baby, and she was so tiny. Like, all the babies in our family were like 7 or 8 pounds, and Kristlyn was, you know, just under 7 pounds. So and then she dropped to 6'4", so she was like 6 pounds. But afterwards, she was fine. They took her away, did all her tests or whatever, and they took us to our room. And we stayed in the hospital for like 3 days just because the whole chance of infection, because I was exposed so long when my water broke because I didn't go in like I was supposed to. But afterwards, we stayed in the hospital. They discharged me a day early, but they allowed me to stay with her. So if somebody else needed the room, they could take it from me, but they would keep Chrislyn. And we went home. I think it was on day 3 or day 4. I'm not sure if we stayed 3 or 4 days. I can't remember. It's been a while. But we went home, and that first night, like, I was having a really hard time getting around. And I noticed that I was bleeding a lot, but I had never had a kid before, so I don't really know how much you're supposed to bleed. And the next morning, on that first night we were home, I got up to, like, they give you this little bottle to, like, clean yourself. Sorry. But I was filling that up and looking at myself in the mirror, and I thought I was sweating because, like, I was really, really hot, so I went up to go to the bathroom, and I woke up on the floor with my head, like, cocked against the tub, and I had passed out on the floor. There was blood all around me, and nobody came to check on me. When I asked my mom, I was like, why didn't you come running? She was like, oh, we didn't hear you. We thought you, like, dropped a shampoo bottle or something. And I was like, okay, good to know. So my dad is too old and his back is messed up. My mom's obviously not strong enough and to carry me down the stairs, so they called the ambulance to come get me, and they had to, like, get a stair chair and take me downstairs. It was really embarrassing. And they took me to Cape Fear Hospital because I couldn't get on post. So when I get to Cape Fear, obviously I'm breastfeeding, and they wouldn't let me bring Chrislyn into, like, the emergency unit. So I couldn't feed her, and, like, she wasn't on formula. She was strictly on breast milk, exclusively breastfeeding. And I had to switch her to formula that day because they wouldn't let her back there. And when he finally did, like, because I was like, you need to let her back here or I'm going to sue you. Like, this is a lawsuit. And finally he let her back there. But they ended up, what happened was my cervix was closing before my uterus pushed everything out. So blood was pooling in my uterus, and that's what caused me, I was bleeding and, like, caused, like, big ass blood clots. Like, the size of, the first one was the size of the baseball, and then the second one was, like, she said, like, T-bone size, which is, like, a weird, anyways. So they ended up having to do a DNC, which is basically an abortion if you didn't know, except they put me under. And it dried up my milk, so I couldn't breastfeed after that, and they had to put her on Nutromgen. But I was, like, the healing after that was kind of painful. I couldn't get out of bed for a little bit, so my mom, thank God, really had to help me the first couple weeks with Chrislyn because I was in so much pain. But the good thing is I didn't really bleed a lot since they took everything out. Another thing is, my mom always told me I was B positive. Come to find out I'm B negative and Daniel's A positive, so we're incompatible. So I had to have a shot in my butt at 28 weeks to keep my body from making antibodies to kill the baby. And it's not so much as a problem with your first kid as it is your second kid, because if your body sensitizes, it'll make the antibodies regardless and it'll kill off your next baby. So with my next one, I have to have the shot before I conceive, or, like, as soon as I conceive, so that my body won't kill the baby. But I don't plan on having any more, so. But yeah, so what happened is Womack was supposed to give me a shot, like, right after the baby was born, but they prolonged it, I don't know why, and didn't give it to me, so my body made the antibodies. So now my blood is sensitized, and I'm high risk automatically for my next birth. But that's basically it. I don't think, I'm reading my notes to see if I missed anything. Oh, the whole thing about me bleeding, it was because the nurse only came in, they're supposed to push on what's called your fundus. It's on your stomach. It really freaking hurts. That's what everybody talks about after they have a baby. I didn't know that I was supposed to be doing it myself. She didn't tell me that. She just came in. One nurse came in one time and she was pushing on my stomach and she was like, we have to get everything out. And I was like, oh, well, okay, I guess I'll come in and do it again. They never did. And, like, I'm sleep deprived because I haven't slept, you know, in forever. I'm taking care of a baby in the hospital. So that's why that happened. But I would never go back to Womack for anything, to be honest. Like, I got her a pediatrician off post because I hated Womack so much. And, well, she was on Medicare, so she had to go, or Medicaid, she had to go off post anyway. But now that we're military, because Daniel joined the Army, I don't think that I would ever have a baby at a military hospital ever again. Anywhere. Because I just don't. No. And because I was so young, they just treated me so poorly. Because I was still on. I was on my dad's TRICARE. So I wasn't paying for the birth or anything. So they kind of treated me like not a priority. But it's whatever. I really don't care. I didn't have to pay for childbirth. But that's pretty much my birth story. If you have any questions, just ask, because been there, done that. Being pregnant sucks. Don't let anybody tell you it doesn't suck. There are some good moments, but like nobody tells you the bad parts about being pregnant. I could do a video on that, to be honest. Like things that people don't tell you about delivery and like all that stuff. So just let me know if you want to see that. But alright guys,